afternoon and welcome. Welcome to today's First Friday presentation. It has been several months since I've had the chance to be with you all for these programs, and so I'm very glad to be back among you, glad to see you all this afternoon. So today, we have a bit of a surprise. It was a surprise for me, and it may be a surprise for some of you. But today we're welcoming J.D. Bowman, who's professor of theater at McPherson College, and several students who will perform a little bit for us from this weekend's performance of Dearly Departed. I really want to thank J.D. and his guests because this was sort of a surprise. So Herb Smith, who I know you were all anticipating hearing, is actually ill. He was hoping to be able to come and present, but yesterday said he was going to conserve his energy to keep trying to lecture and care for his students in his classes. And so he just didn't feel like he could come over and share the presentation. So we're really sorry to miss what Herb was going to share. And we will hope that he'll be able to be included in the spring schedule and still come back and share what he was going to present. And if you know Herb personally, feel free to reach out and just say that you're thinking of him. But I'm so grateful that yesterday I said, we really have this gap. JD, would you be willing to share a presentation at First Fridays? And he said, absolutely, and I'll bring some students to help me. And so we're just really anxious to hear. What I understand is that they'll be sharing about comedy in theater and how comedy can elevate or how it can kind of be a detriment in theater. So we'll hear more about that in just a moment. And so with those many announcements and with the warm invitation to join us at homecoming next weekend, I will once again thank and welcome JD and his students to share with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Monica. Hello, everyone. It's so good to see you again. So many friendly faces. Again, I'm J.D. Bowman. I'm going to just introduce our students here that are already in costume for this evening's production, if you can't tell. This is Kenzie Jansonius, and she is from, where are you from, Kenzie?
Prairie View, Kansas.
That's right, Prairie View, Kansas. Thank you for that reminder. She's a sophomore history and politics major at McPherson College. We have Cali Godwin, who is a senior communication major from Wichita, Kansas, and Harvey Yeoman, who is a sophomore theater and chemistry double major from Belle Plaine, Kansas. Thanks, I had to work on that memory. And they're here to present a scene for you from Dearly Departed. And just like Monica spoke about, we're going to be talking a little bit today about comedy and the benefits of doing comedy, but also the challenges of doing comedy. Since the performance this weekend is a comedy about a dysfunctional family who is trying to plan a funeral. And this show we've always advertised it by saying we put the fun in dysfunctional. That's kind of the fun of the trip, fun of the play. So I'm gonna let them perform first so then we can start talking about it. This is actually seen in Act 2 when they're at the wake of the funeral. And Raynell here, played by Kenzie. Raynell has just lost her husband. His name is Bud, and they all call him Daddy Bud. And she's lost her husband, and she's greeting all of the many visitors that come to the wake to talk about Bud. And two of the people coming to the wake are Vida and Norval, and they're old friends in the town of Raynell and Bud, and I'll let you guys take it away. Yeah.
Well, we sure were sorry to hear about Bud.
Oh, that's all right, baby. Normal looks better since last I saw him.
Well, he has his good days and he has his bad. Ain't that right, Norval?
What did he say?
I believe he said the corn eats many miles. That's real good, Norval.
That's good, Norval. That's real good.
Every once in a while, Norval takes a walk through the garden, if you know what I mean.
My goodness. Well, how are you holding up, baby?
Oh, not The doctor's got him on these new liver medication that seem to be working out a lot better. Ain't that right, Normal? Normal! I lost him there for a second. Gotta remember to get them batteries changed on his pacemaker. Since he had his bypass and his gallbladder out, I've noticed a real improvement. Oh, where are those? Here you go. And next month, we're getting that prostate out. Ain't that right, Normal? Of course, we gotta keep that blood pressure down. And this one's for his stomach, and then we have one for his liver, and what keeps his kidneys working. I tell you, it's a lot to remember.
I can imagine.
Go, honey. You getting anything, Normal? Well, of course, Ernest Wendell comes in twice a week to help with his bath and all. And she sits with them, and if I have to go into town, you getting anything more, Normal? Of course, he's on a real strict diet, and so I gotta be real careful with what he eats. No salt, no sugar, no fat, no meat, no dairy, nothing too spicy, nothing too heavy. You want a cracker? Cracker, right?
No, thank you, Veda.
Yeah, after we get his physical therapy out of the way in the morning, I give him his injection and irrigate him for about an hour. Once he's had his lunch, he takes a good long nap, and then I usually put him out on the porch and let him watch the sunset while I get supper ready. I gotta be real careful though. One time I got him talking on the phone and left him out there for over an hour. The mosquitoes got him pretty bad. Of course, summer's the big meal of the day, and so it's always a gamble to see if he's gonna be able to keep it down. Once I get everything, his medication done, and get him to bed, he usually sleeps through till the morning. Of course, I don't get too much sleep myself if I have to get up and turn him every couple hours.
Well,
No, I really am lucky to have him.
you are so lucky to have him.
What was that?
What did he say?
Okay.
What did he say?
I'm not exactly sure. Something about Debbie Reynolds. That's real good.
Okay, so that gives you a little flavor of the humor in the play. But what I would like to talk about a little bit, I specifically thought this scene would be a good one to bring to you all, because what I thought I'd talk about is how when we work on a play, and any type of comedy, you have a little issue, because in this day and age, a lot of comedy makes us look at ourselves and what our society is like. But sometimes people in the audience will start to feel a little bit offended. So you have to be a little careful as far as what type of comedy you can put out there and how you perform it. We've talked a lot with the students about the difference between upholding a character and playing a character with justice and honor, or playing a character that makes fun of a character. And a lot of the times in younger performers that are not as developed or trained, a lot of the times they end up standing up on stage and telling jokes that are making fun of other people. And that's not as fun for an audience to sit through. So we work a lot about upholding that. So I thought it'd be interesting for you all to kind of talk a little bit about what you've done in working on this scene and how that makes a difference when they're performing it. And then we can also open it up for questions as well. I do want to point out that I asked Cali to come along and use her script because she just started playing this role 2 days ago, and we opened tonight, so she's still memorizing those lines. She'll be ready. We still have a couple hours yet. We have plenty of time. So Kenzie, you actually play Raynell through the entirety of the show, and Veda and Norval are just here in the play for that one scene. So I'm going to start with you, and you can talk a little bit about what you did as far as the rehearsal process.
Hi, I'm Kenzie. I play Raynell, and it's really fun to do. I love it. One of my favorite things about this play is that I'm from a very small town in northwestern Kansas, and I see in this show people that I recognize. And I feel like it's that way for everybody that's going to see the show. And to make it that way, we have to present it in a way that's not like, oh, I'm making fun of rednecks, or I'm making fun of this certain type of people, or, oh, they're poor, so this is what they're doing for this. So in making Raynell more authentic, it's been really, like, I'm someone that shows a lot of emotion, like, in every part of my life. And Raynell is a character that's very grounded, that's very just deadpan sense of humor. And so it's been kind of difficult for me in doing that, but I think that by doing that and just sort of like finding places where I can identify with that character, then it makes it easier to honor that character instead of just turning it into just a time to make fun of people like Raynell. Hi, I'm Cali. So like JD said, I learned I was playing this role a couple days ago. Other than that, I do play a very pregnant woman in the play as well, which is really fun. And so I think both of them, I try really hard to, like Kenzie said, give that character justice and not make fun of them. Because even though like it can be pretty funny about all the issues that Norval will have, it's quite amazing to me that this character, with all he has, still loves him and still wants to care for him in that way. So it's not making fun in any way. It's showing that I do this because I love him. He's my husband. At least that's what I'm assuming. So I'm taking care of him, and it's something that I enjoy to do, and I still am going to love him no matter what. So I think that's kind of the point of that role. Even though it is funny, it's not necessarily making fun of people that necessarily go through those things. It's just kind of how we take care of each other and how I kind of look over him. When it comes to my other character, even though she is pregnant with 10 kids already and has a baby on her hip, I think even going through that, like, I'm the oldest of 7, and so I know what it's like being around kids and dealing with all that. So it's not necessarily making fun of having so many kids. It's me being the character of going through it and playing it as a mom who really enjoys having my kids and really just is happy to have that many and be pregnant at that same moment, even though it's a lot. So like playing 2 different polar opposite characters can be interesting as well with that. But I think, like JD said, just not showing completely like, oh, she's a train wreck for having 10 kids, or oh my gosh, she has so many issues. It's the fact of all of them are out of love, and that's who my character is. And so I try to do my best and play that in the best that I can.
Hi, I'm Harvey. I play Norval, and as well as Reverend Hooker, who's the pastor in the play. Yeah. So for Norval, I've known someone in my family who was very like Norval, just has a lot of issues, but everyone still like cares for that person and like takes care of them, and that's kind of how I've based my role as Norval on that. For Reverend Hooker, he's a very, very annoyed priest. He doesn't enjoy having to do his job. So I've tried to get a little bit of the, what's the word? Something, synonym for annoyance, into it, but also still play him as a person and not just a angry preacher. Like, you can't have a one-dimensional character. They have to have more things about them. That's about all I have.
For me, I really enjoyed this show. This is the second time that I've directed the show here at McPherson College, and the first time was 14 years ago, and I really enjoy the show because I grew up in the city. I grew up right outside of Chicago in Elgin, Illinois, and I spent a couple of years when I was more newly married living in the mountains in Georgia, right at the bottom of the Appalachian Trail, and the people that I met could easily populate this script. It was really fun to meet the people and see what type of characters they were. And it was interesting for me because what's at the heart of the script, and I think this scene kind of shows it, what's at the heart of it is that you don't always get to pick what hand you're dealt, but you do get to pick your attitude with that hand that you're dealt. And you do get to uphold each other and be part of a community based on love. And here, the joke is that instead of 1 or 2 issues as Norval's gotten older, he has, 15 to 30 issues as he's getting older. And that's, comedy is about exaggerating everything. And so that's what the authors do there. But like Cali said, she's taking care of him, and it's this love that pushes her through even though she's in this situation. And that's really good for me because although I'm not a train wreck yet, I already have 4 kids, so I'm halfway to a train wreck, I guess, if you were saying that. And sometimes, the day-to-day can be overwhelming. And what I remember, when my children are all still rather young, and we like to say, my partner and I like to say that the days are long, even though the years are fast. Years are short. And so we like to have that perspective of no, what we're still doing is we're still really focusing on the community that we're building and that love. And that's kind of what the play talks about. Almost every scene has some sort of aspect of love and community building in it, even if it's a community that you don't necessarily want built. And they make fun of that in some of the scenes as well. They're like, oh wow, this person's on my team and I don't know if I want them on my team. And that helps to remind us that we're not always in control of that community that builds up around us, but in the end, we're always really grateful, or could be really grateful, for that community. So that's primarily the main idea of the play and how we're trying to negotiate that with comedy and still uphold these characters. So I want to thank you guys for being here. I also want to open it up for questions. I know that you guys probably might have questions, especially for the students. I'm also available to answer questions, but any questions that you might have about the rehearsal process, the show, or anything that we talked about with comedy for the students? Yeah.
How can one person only be assigned a part 2 days ago?
That's a really good question. Well, Callie's very talented, so she'll be able to learn that really quickly. It's a guest artist that's doing different nights of the performance. So next weekend, Callie's actually not playing the performance. We have a different person playing it next weekend. But when we found out the guest artist wasn't able to make it this weekend, she just stepped up, and she had already been at rehearsals, so she's already familiar with the scene. And I think the joy for us is she's playing this pregnant mother, very pregnant mother, in the scene previous to this, and so she literally has seconds to turn in from the pregnant woman with the baby on her hip to suddenly Veda that you see in front of you. So that's kind of fun for us as a challenge. But yeah, that's a great question. I think one thing theater does is it teaches you flexibility.
This is not a question, this is a comment, but not as a criticism. I've got somewhat of a hearing problem, and the volume here with your middle lady there is a little bit screechy to me. I can't understand her.
That's good to know. That's good to know. And it is screechy. That's actually what she was kind of going for. She got the job done. She got the job done. So now she has to balance, and you've gotten this note before too, haven't you? She has to balance screechy with also being understood for our audience. But the screechiness is definitely there. She had already developed, as an actress, she's already developed a character voice for her pregnant woman. And since she's playing another role 2 minutes later, she's trying to come up with something different. So yeah, but that is gesture.
The speed with which she talks is also impossible for us old folks to understand.
That is a terrific point, and I'd love to use that to talk a little bit more about comedy, too. A couple years ago, and if you didn't hear the comment, the speed, Ms. Howell said the speed at which we talk is pretty fast, and I would agree with that. That's a great point about comedy in general, and also college performances right now. There's a big chasm between what used to be comedy and what's comedy now because of things like the internet and what I call the McDonaldization of our community. And what I mean by McDonaldization is when you want something, you can go get something right away. And if you don't want it, or if it's not available, then you don't want it, and you move on to something else. And with Twitter and things like that, they're used to jokes in 100 characters or 100 letters or less. So if they don't get a joke in a certain amount of time frame, they don't see it as funny as what it used to be. A couple years ago, we produced the comedy Blithe Spirit, which is a good classic comedy. And the students hated that production. They hated working on that production. None of them found it funny. They were like, this is just a man, it's just a constant joke of a man and his nagging wives, whether they're alive or dead. It's a 2-hour, and actually we cut it down because it was actually close to 2 hours and 45 minutes, the way it's written. Because at that time, comedies were longer. People wanted to pay for their entertainment. They wanted to see a full night entertainment. But the students were like, this is not the type of comedy. It's not funny for them to have a man just complain about his. Almost every joke in Blithe Spirit is based on the fact that his 2 wives are nagging him for 2 hours. And they're just not into that. They just don't find that funny. And so we have to find that balance between what we know as audiences and what we appreciate as a style and what they find interesting and can uphold as an issue as well. We actually worked on Blithe Spirit. I don't think none of the 3 of you were there, but there are other people in the cast of this one that were in Blithe Spirit. We tried to teach like what the comic style was of the time and tried to capture that, but it made it very hard because they're so far removed from what that style is. Do you guys want to talk about a little bit about that too with this show? How the scene, like the length of the scenes, and yeah.
Okay. I would say most of the scenes are very quick, very snappy. Almost all of our scene changes are 10 seconds or less, because after that, you just lose the audience. If JD tells us in rehearsal, if you give people time to look down at their phones, especially during a performance, they will. So almost all of our scenes are really snappy. It's a very snappy comedy. Blink and you'll miss it, almost. And it's a little bit different style. This is the first comedy I've ever been in, so I'm really excited about that. But it's just a different style than what I'm used to, and it's been really fun to work on, and it's been really great. A lot of the humor is, like from my character's like grieving, trying to cope with the death of her husband, and here comes all of this family to try to help plan a funeral, and she has to deal with that and cope with that. And so there are a lot of jokes in it, but it's not just like, oh hey, like it was in Blithe Spirit, like, oh hey, I'm gonna make fun of my wife. Like that's really not what's going on here. We're honoring the characters, and we're honoring the experiences of those who have had experience like the characters. Yeah, I would say definitely the scenes are very, very quick. I have about a team of 4 people helping me change characters between being pregnant and being this one. And so when I do with my voice, even though it is very nasally, I did have a different voice when I started, and I got the note to be more nasally. And I think it is good to have that too, just because I do want to kind of differentiate my characters, because like you said, my pregnant character is a very different tone of voice. very different in the way she speaks and talks. And so I try to differentiate those as much as I can. So that is why I am more nasally. And then when it comes to a lot of scenes, even all the notes we get every night from rehearsal, especially like all from JD, is just saying like, you know, be faster as much as you can, because sometimes you slow it down and it can sound better sometimes, but then when you hear the joke, it kind of just flies right by you just because how slow it is, and so it doesn't give that effect. And so even this week, with all the improvements that the whole cast has made in taking in JD's notes and everything that he's been trying to tell us to do and to get us to move forward with the show, you could tell how much more funny the show is this week than it has been. Just because I'm only in the second half, I tend to just stand backstage and watch the show and see how it is. And I've even noticed a huge improvement just this week because people are being faster. The previous weeks, you know, it's still funny and you still see the jokes here and there. But once they're done a little faster in that sense, it kind of just makes you want to laugh even more. It's kind of like when I watch a movie of a comedy, like there's movies that I don't like that are comedies, and that's because a joke comes every 10 minutes or even every 20 minutes, and then you kind of lose me for the next 20 minutes. Whereas like comedies that I love are joke after joke after joke, and it just keeps going and makes me want to laugh the whole time. And I kind of think that's what this play is accomplishing, is that it makes you just want to laugh the whole play because you're getting those jokes and they're just coming at you and you just never want to stop. So
a little bit. One of the things I noticed about like the speed and timing is if you take too long for a joke, even just a single joke, the audience will get distracted, and then once the punchline comes, they'll be confused as to what's happening, what's funny about this. And so being quick and snappy on lines and not taking pauses between lines helps to kind of move along the play and keep everyone engaged.
But yes, I agree, it is fast. Yeah, Steve.
Several of us, quite a number of us in this room, have hearing impairment. And it's not always the speed, but it's a matter of diction. And when one gets into a character voice, very often what happens is those final consonants are dropped. And so when one has a hearing impairment, we may hear, if the consonant is not strong, we may hear a totally different word than what is being said. So I don't think it's always so much a matter of speed, and it is being really careful when in a character voice to have good diction, and particularly paying attention to consonants.
Have any of you heard that before?
Oh yeah, that's every time in rehearsal, every single actor and actress gets that note. It's something that we work on a lot because diction is not always something that we do on a day-to-day basis, just because a lot of us aren't used to talking that way. And it's something that we need to become used to more and more, and it's something that you just keep growing with and you keep doing as you continue to be in the theater and as you just get older.
Yes.
Got two comments here. Many of the Bar Association shows, they have a program there, a play or whatever. And one audience there is the secretaries and the lay people who work in the lawyer's office, and the other is the audiences of the attorneys and their wife. They laugh at entirely different things. And the second thing, I don't know whether this is Blythe's fair or not, but whatever play it was that I saw, one of my favorite lines was a one-liner. This male character walks by the mantelpiece where his ashes of his wife are, and he flips some ashes in and says, "Honey, you've been picking up some weight lately."
Yeah, that is. I have a affinity for the wit of specifically British writers. But going back to your first comment, it is definitely fun to see who laughs at what when they come to our shows. Last night we had a mom that had surprised their cast member, like student, She came up about 14 hours. She's from southern Texas, and she came up and surprised him to see the dress rehearsal. He knew they were coming this weekend, but she came early so she could see it. And she was raised in Georgia, in the Deep South, and she understands these families and this accent, and she laughed at completely different things than what the students have been used to hearing laughter for, so it was really fun to hear that perspective. I also am old enough to have had the experience of seeing Driving Miss Daisy in the movie theater, and I happened to see it. It was, I don't know why it was segregated this way, but there was about half of the movie theater were African Americans, and about half of the movie theater were Jewish Americans, and the jokes were completely different depending on depending on the jokes. The laughter was completely different in that film. So yeah, thanks for saying that. Any other questions? Yeah, Bonnie.
Your students are busy, they take classes, so
Yes.
do you have a period of time when you just instruct for the play and then you have rehearsals? Or how do you get everybody?
That's a really good question. I love that question. Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, so a lot of us do have a lot of things going on. For instance, even though I'm only taking 12 credit hours this semester, being a senior, I got a light load this year, thankfully. I also have about 7 jobs on campus. And so, yeah, I'm very active. And so with that, it can be hard to balance that. But to answer your question, JD does a really good job of setting out rehearsal times for specific people. So this cast, just for this show specifically, we have a lot of different sections where, like, only us 3 are the ones in this scene. And so we'll have, usually, even though I only got thrown into it 2 days ago, typically we would have a rehearsal like once or twice a week with just us 3 just performing that scene. And I think that's how this show is primarily split up, is that it was split up with your cast member. So before all this, my scene where I'm pregnant, I'm really only in it with one other person, and then I'm in like the end funeral scene with everybody else. And so I only rehearsed about twice a week, which worked very well with my schedule. And then these past couple weeks, when it comes closer to the time, we rehearse quite a bit more. But other than that, with this show specifically, we got split up pretty well for the most part. I mean, even when we audition, JD has us fill out our time schedules and when we're available, when we're not. And so he does a really good job of planning that out when we can all meet and splitting it up as need be. And so that's kind of how we all balance it. If you have a bigger role, you probably have way more rehearsals, but do either one of you.
I was originally cast as one of the singers and an understudy, so I did not expect this. I am taking 16 credit hours this semester, primarily history courses, so a lot of reading, a lot of writing. I have 4 on-campus jobs, and I'm an exec board member of 2 different clubs. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And I was right, it is, it's nuts, it's insane, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. I love it. I never feel more alive, more at home than when I'm on that stage or working on sets or running lines or making costumes.
This week and last week, about half of last week, we've usually been rehearsing about 7 or 7:30 until 10 or 10:30 at night. That's usually what we do, and that's Sunday through Friday. Yeah, and then I meet with people, like Kelly was saying, individually. I meet with them as their schedule permits during the day.
JD, you started a play, and it's funny play.
Yeah.
Nobody laughs.
Yes.
So then what do you do?
Cry. I'll tell you a secret about me if you ever look back in the theater, and you'll see if I'm standing there or not. I stand in the very back of the theater until the first joke hits. And then I know, because comedy is something that comes a little more intrinsically to me than tragedy. Probably because I've had enough tragedy in my life, I might as well learn how to laugh more about things. But I stand in the back of the theater and I wait until that first joke hits, and once I hear how the audience responds to it, I know how the rest of the night's gonna go. And so then it frees me up to either sit and watch it, or to go ahead and leave and do dishes, or to do anything else I need to do during the show. But I'll stand back there, and if the first joke doesn't hit right, I'll sometimes even check back in multiple times throughout the show and see which parts of the night are hitting better. I can usually, my first big, huge performance was that I was in was over 35 years ago. And so it's just something that I've grown and learned how to do over time. And I can't tell you much about statistics for any of the sports players, but I can tell you how a joke will play out. And I can usually pretty accurately estimate what the feedback's going to be from an audience before it actually comes. And it's hard, but comedy is really tricky. It's about time, it's that joke, right? Like, what's hard about comedy? Timing, right? And then getting that out. But I happen to really also appreciate awkward humor and things that make people feel awkward, because I like looking at why we're polite and what's our society structure. But most of the things I always boil down to is the empathy and the love. So even if a joke doesn't hit, I sometimes feel like the point can hit even when the joke doesn't.
I'm always amazed by casting, how you pick people to do the job.
I wear them down with begging. The truth is I am too. Sometimes I take risks with things. In fact, this is a cast of 14, and 9 of them are making their McPherson College debut. They've never been in a show at McPherson College. Some of them have never been in a show at all. So it's really fun to work with that crowd. What's fun about the 5 upperclassmen who have done shows with me before, it's fun for them to support these new people getting involved and watch them grow too. I think each of you have had a scene interacting with someone who's never been on stage before, so I think it makes it exciting. Makes it challenging, but it makes it exciting, yeah.
Do you have problems with profanity in some of the plays?
Yes. Yes. We have never produced a play that is worse than the college cafeteria language, unfortunately. So the problem and I say that because the problem that comes with the play and profanity in the play is how comfortable different generations are with it. So we have different levels of audience members that are more or less accepting. It is hard to believe sometimes, but it's hard to hear, because I have, as the students know, I have a lot of problems with religious cursing, for instance, and so I don't ever do that personally as an actor, and I'll not sign up for a role that does that. We can't edit a play without written permission from the author. That's actually illegal to do. I know that other local theaters do that actively. We also can't videotape or photograph anything during a show. That's also illegal to do, and we could get huge fines for doing both of those things. So there's 2,000 years of plays, so I'm always, instead of, if there's theater companies that don't want to produce plays with profanity in them, there are plenty of other plays. This play, for instance, according to the Motion Picture Academy Association, would only be PG, but they do say hell and damn and they do say that one too. Yeah, that's right. There's like twice that they say that one. But it would be only considered PG according to the Motion Picture Academy. What's hard about that is when you're seeing it live, it sometimes feels differently than when you see it on a movie screen. But there are things that at the college level we would never do. We wouldn't do there's certain plays that we just wouldn't produce. But profanity is hard. Well, I don't want to speak for any of you, but I think all of you guys are rather comfortable with profanity on stage. I'm really going to call you out like that. Do you want to speak about that?
Sure. I get that it's like a generational thing. Like JD said, we don't do anything that's worse than what you hear in the college cafeteria. Profanity, like whether it's in high school or at the college level or out in the workplace even today, it just happens, and it's a part of life. And to portray characters that say those things is always interesting. I try not to do religious curses. I need to work on that. But that would be something for me that I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable doing on stage. But other than that, I mean, it happens. And it's a part of the show for a reason. The author isn't just like, oh, let's put a hell here and let's put this word there and all sorts of 4-letter stuff. It's for a reason. It's not just a cuss.
Yeah, I would definitely say, even for that character, it can be hard for them to cuss on stage or say any sort of profanity of that sort. But you do have to kind of, like we said, like we're becoming those characters. And I mean, you walk around and people curse all the time, unfortunately. And so you hear that, and that's that character. That's something that they would say. And so you just kind of have to suck it up and say it. I mean, even if it's not a cuss word, even like the last play, and Tanner had to say that Hitler was in heaven. That's hard. That was hard for him to say that. And it's hard to listen. Like my 89-year-old grandma was in the audience yelling, "Oh, I know where he's at." And like, we know, we all agree. It's just when you have to be that character. And if that's what that character wants to say and that's what they want to believe, you got to say it, and you got to be that character and do it in the best of your ability, even no matter how hard you want to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, to echo Cali, a big part of it is kind of separating the character from yourself. Like, even if it's something that I myself would not say in my daily life, I am in the role as this character, and it is my job to portray this character. So I would want to accurately portray them with cussing and all. Yeah.
It's tricky because you want to honor the writer and you want to honor the characters that they've created, but you also don't want to turn off an audience and push people away by jarring them out of it with language. But it is a different, there's definitely been a shift in my lifestyle as my lifetime as far as what the different levels of rude language and what's acceptable or not, and what things are in our daily media now, and what things are allowed through movies now. And I happen to raise children, and for us, it's a lot harder as a parent to show my children any film with extreme violence in it. That to me should be much more banned than sexual situations in film, because a lot of the times, again, with my kind of like the shows that I like to pick, I happen to want to uphold love instead of death. And so a lot of the choices that we make in the plays that we do at the college, there's still a philosophy behind that as to why we pick it and the times that we pick it. Any other questions? I know we're running out of time. We'd be glad to answer any other questions afterwards. Thank you so much for having us here. Thank you, Monica, and thank you everybody for being here. Thank you for